Okay, so made this video here to try to explain kind of the basics of this new software we're going to be using called Fusion 360, which is a mechanical design software um, that can create pretty complicated products and assemblies. I can show you a few pictures here. Everything you see here was created in Fusion 360, so you can kind of see you can create all kinds of different products like something like this, and you can see it's made up of different bodies and components and assembled together. You can pretty much design absolutely anything in here. Any sort of product that you've ever seen before can be designed in Fusion 360. So a lot more powerful than what we use with Google SketchUp. Google SketchUp's more for on the architectural side, whereas Fusion is more on the mechanical design, product design side. Okay, so here's your interface here. Starting with, I'll try to take you through, some of the ones that we'll be using just to create our fidget spinner, and maybe some extra things as well. But starting with the waffle button here, it's called your data panel over on the top left corner here. If you click on that, that's where you can either upload a previous file, okay, or create a new project here, or anything that you save. It's all cloud-based. It's all saved on the cloud, but this is where you would go and retrieve any sort of files. So if I were to, let's say, create a new project, I'd call it, test project. Okay, and now whatever I now create going forward, if I open that, will be saved in the test project folder. Okay, so let's just minimize that and we'll close that off. Okay, so waffle button. You can also start a new design here. This is where you can export to different file types, 3D print, etc., etc. Okay, and our save button and undo and redo buttons are also up here. All right, so starting with what's on the left here, pretty much anything that we're going to create. So this is kind of like our parts browser. Anything that we create, any sort of sketches or bodies or 3D shapes, it's all going to show up here. And you'll see as we create them, there'll be these little light bulbs beside it. And with these light bulbs, we can either turn them on or turn them off. So you can see right now, this light bulb's turned off and we see just a blank screen. But when we turn it on, okay, we actually see our three planes that we can draw on. Okay, so let me just double check there. Okay, so I'll take you through starting with the sketch menu. Okay, and we'll take a look at the create menu, a few items, a few tools in there, a few tools in the modify menu, and a few tools in the construct menu. If you look over to the right, you'll kind of see the different viewpoints that you can take within our 3D space here. And as I create stuff, I will kind of maneuver around this and you'll see how this works here. So there's that to navigate around your part, but then there's also, of course, your orbit tool, your pan tool, and your zoom. And using your mouse and your scroll wheel on your mouse, you can actually orbit, pan, and zoom a lot like we do in SketchUp. Okay, so let's start by creating a sketch. Everything that you do in Fusion 360 has to start with a 2D sketch. All right, so you start with a 2D sketch and you give it dimensions, sizes, and from there we use the term, I know in SketchUp we use the term push-pull, whereas in Fusion 360 we use the term extrude. So you would extrude into 3D shapes after you've created 2D sketches, okay? And for the most part, you can only sketch, you'll see when I go to this plus button, which means create a new sketch, you'll see the 3 planes pop up that you can draw on. Okay, so this is our 3D planes, right? So we can draw our 2D sketch on either one of these planes, depending on what we feel like we want to draw on, or depending on the part and where we want to start, you would choose a specific plane. So I'm going to just choose a random plane. I'll choose this bottom plane here. And you'll see we'll move into kind of a 2D space. All right, and I'm just using my scroll wheel right now to zoom in and out. Okay, and I'm going to just start by maybe creating a rectangle. So if I click on sketch, the sketch menu here, you'll see kind of all the different options that I have. And there's quite a few. I'm not going to show you all of them. I'll show you a few of them. We'll do the line, rectangle, circle. You'll see when we do our fidget spinner, we'll probably use arcs and polygons. We can potentially use the trim tool, the offset tool, which is a lot like the offset tool in SketchUp, mirror tool, so we can mirror different entities that we draw, circular patterns, same thing, we can create patterns, so we don't have to draw, if we're drawing bolt holes in a circular pattern, we don't have to draw each one. We can create a pattern, and you can see, I'll show you later how you can create one pretty quickly. Rectangular pattern, okay, and the project tool also is useful, but not so much with what we need to do. So we'll see if I end up showing you any detail about that. All right, so let's start with just a rectangle tool. And if you notice here, I can just, instead of every time I want to draw a rectangle, or a line for that matter, instead of clicking on sketch and then rectangle and then 2-point rectangle, I can just click R on my keyboard. Or if I want to do a line, I can just click L on my keyboard. Okay, so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to click R on my keyboard. All right, and I'm going to click once, and I'm going to drag my rectangle out. And you can see the dimensions changing. They're in millimeters as I'm dragging out. Okay, it doesn't matter what I make the dimensions right now because I'm going to change it. So before I even click, say I want to make the dimensions here 100 millimeters wide. So before I've finished clicking, I'm going to just type in 100, and you can see how it changes on the bottom there. Hit the tab key, and it'll switch to the length of the rectangle, and say I want to make that 35 millimeters. Okay, hit the tab key again, and hit enter, and you have just created your rectangle. Now say I want to just kind of move away from this sketch palette, which I'll explain in a second. Press on your scroll wheel, okay, and you can see that opens up the pan tool. If I press on my scroll wheel, and I hit shift, or hit shift first, then press on your scroll wheel, you can see that you can orbit around, okay, but I don't really want to orbit around right now. You can also orbit around using this. Remember I told you I would show you what this does. And you can see I'm just clicking and holding and moving this around, and I can toggle between viewpoints. So say I want to see my top view. Bam, it'll toggle to my top view. Let's say I want to toggle, click this little arrow here, and it'll toggle to my front view. And of course it's a 2D shape, so all you see is really just a line drawn, which is starting from here and out, but it just looks like one big line because of our axes that's there. Let's go back to the top view. Okay, so you can toggle either using the orbit tool, or you can kind of move around here up in this view cube that's up there. Okay, so a couple things. We have now given this dimensions of 100 millimeters by 35 millimeters. Okay, you'll see a little bit later on, you have to give dimensions in order to extrude the part. Okay, so let's say I didn't give dimensions. So let's say I just did, I'll delete what's there, and I create a rectangle again. But this time I didn't type in my dimensions. I just click and I stop, and you'll see that I didn't type in any dimensions, and you'll see that instead of having an all black rectangle, what you get is a blue rectangle. And these lines appear black because they're on top of the axes here, but they would also be blue if I drew them out in space here. Okay, so you'll see that I can't extrude this because I haven't given it the proper sizes. I haven't told Fusion 360 what I want the size to be. And if you haven't done that, simply press D on your keyboard. Okay, press D on your keyboard, or go to Sketch, Sketch Dimension, and you'll be able to give it proper sizes. So I'm going to click D on my keyboard here and press this line. And you'll see that right now it's drawn at 102.8. I'm going to change that, so I'm going to click. And now that option to edit the dimension pops up, and I can type 100 and press enter. Okay. Now, did you see how this line now turned black? Okay. Now watch what happens when I dimension this. Okay, I'm going to make that 40. I'll make it 35 like I did before. Okay, and now you can see the rectangle's gone black. That means that it's ready to extrude. I've given it the proper dimensions. Okay, so from here now, there's a few things we can do. So I can either draw circles in here that will end up being holes, or I can extrude it into 3D and then draw the circles into it and create the holes afterwards. I'll show you both. Okay, so I'm going to draw a circle. I'll draw two circles here. Okay, so one here and one on this side. So to draw a circle, you go Sketch, Circle, and you can see I can just hit the letter C on my keyboard. Okay, so I'm trying to learn these shortcuts to make me more efficient. So I'm just going to press C, and I'm going to put a circle anywhere right now. Put it right there. Okay, notice how it's blue, right? It's blue because I haven't given it any dimensions. Not only have I not given it a size, but I also haven't told Fusion where exactly, what position I want it with respect to this rectangle. Okay, so not only do you have to give the size, but you also have to give the position. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So I'm going to press D on my keyboard to dimension this circle. And let's just say I'll click on it. And let's say right now that's a diameter of 15 millimeters, 0.442. So I'll make it exactly. So I'll click, then the option to edit will pop up. I'll make it an actual 15 millimeters and just press enter. Okay. Notice how it's still blue. Notice that because I haven't given the position that I want it to be in. I haven't told Fusion how far this circle is from this edge and how far this circle is from this edge. It has to know that, otherwise it's going to stay blue. We want it to turn black. So to do that, I'm going to click the center of the circle and then click this edge here and tell Fusion how far, and I'll just click again, how far off I want that to be from the edge. All right, so let's say I want it to be 20 millimeters. Okay, so that'll be halfway. Or sorry, I made it at 35. 17 and a half would be halfway, but 20 is fine. Okay, notice it's still blue. So click on the middle of the circle again. Click on this edge now. And now tell Fusion how far you want that to be. Let's go 20 millimeters from there as well. Okay, and it moves it in there. Okay, notice it's gone black. That means it's ready for the next phase, which if I want to turn this into a 3D shape and I want to cut this hole out, I can do that because I've given the position, okay, how far away it is from this side, how far away it is from this side, and I've given the size, okay? Now, let's say I want to draw another circle here, okay? The exact same distances and the exact same size as I did on this side. Well, I can draw this all from scratch, so I can create another circle here, draw it, give it dimensions of 15, and give it dimensions of the distance from here to here and here to here. But that might be a little bit more time consuming. There is a tool in the sketch menu called the mirror tool. All right, and I'm going to use the mirror tool in a second. But first I'm just going to undo that circle. Okay, let's just delete. Okay, let's just delete that circle. And I'm gonna draw. I'm gonna do a mirror. Okay, but I want to mirror across the middle here, so that my mirror line is going to be right in the middle, and that circle is going to mirror exactly the same distance on the other side of that mirror line. But I need to create the mirror line. All right, so I'm going to create what's called a construction line. And that brings me to one of the tools on this right-hand side here, which are so important, the sketch palette. Okay, I can create construction lines a lot like the tape measure tool in SketchUp. I can just create, temporary hidden lines that aren't part of my actual entity, but I actually just use as reference points. Okay, so I'm going to click on construction, and I'm going to type the letter L on my keyboard for line. Okay, and I'm going to come here, look at how it snaps to the middle of the line. Did you see how that triangle pops up? Okay, and I can draw that there. Okay, so I've drawn in my mirror line. So now if I go to Sketch, Mirror, this little menu will pop up. First it says select the object that you want to mirror. Here's my object that I want to mirror. I click on it. Then toggle over to selecting the mirror line. So now let's select the mirror line, and you can see that I can choose this construction line, and bam. As soon as I choose that construction line, it creates the circle on the other side, exact same position that this was in at the exact same size. Hit OK. And notice that it's automatically black. Okay, it's automatically black because I gave the position and size on this side. I don't need to give it again because it's a mirrored object. All right. Okay, so we've drawn in kind of just a very simple rectangle and two circles. Okay, so very, very simple there. And what I'll do now is I'll take a look through our Create menu here, and you can see in the Create menu, everything that's in there has to do with 3D shapes. Okay, what we're going to do, the tool that you will use most often in Fusion 360 is no doubt it's going to be what's called the Extrude tool, a lot like the Push-Pull tool from Google SketchUp. And notice that we can use the letter E on our keyboard, okay, as a shortcut. So I don't have to always go to Create, Extrude. I can just type E on my keyboard. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to type E. All right, and right away it comes out of the sketch. By the way, take a look on the left here. Remember I told you that as we add to this, that we would start to see different things open up here. So watch if I open up my sketch folder and I double click, my sketch is already showing, so there's nothing really to show there. Okay, but I can turn it off. So if I take off or I toggle off that little light bulb, you can see the sketch disappears. Toggle it back on and it comes back on. Okay, that comes in handy at times. All right, so now on the right, we have our extrude menu after we typed E on our keyboard. Okay, so I'm just going to take kind of like a 3D view here. I'm going to press the home button up here, and you'll see that it will kind of toggle to a 3D view. The first thing I need to do is select the profile that I want to extrude. So I want to extrude this here, right there. I'll click on the rectangle, okay, and you can see it goes blue. And you can see that right now I can extrude it in the up direction. I can also, if I drag that down, I can extrude it in the down direction. And I can give it a distance that I want to drag it, okay, or extrude it. So in this case, I'm going to do, let's go with 20 millimeters, okay, and you can see, bam, press enter, and it automatically created this 3D block, okay, and again, I can just press the home tool, and that will give me a nice orthographic view there, or a 3D view of my part that I created. Okay, so the extrude tool, extremely important. The only other tool that I'm going to probably end up showing you is what's called the loft tool. Okay, so I will show you that. But for right now, I'm just going to finish off this part, okay, after creating these holes, just by maybe adding a little what's called fillet or chamfer around the edge here. Because often when you design parts, guys, you don't want to leave sharp edges around your part. You don't want it to be any sort of danger, especially if it's something out of metal. So you put just a rounded edge there, and Fusion 360 does that very easily. It's in the Modify menu. Okay, so we're in the Modify menu, and I can choose to do either what's called a fillet, which is a rounded edge, or a chamfer, which is kind of this bevel or angled edge. Okay, so I will do one of each. So first I'll start with a fillet. Okay, and right away this menu for the fillet tool pops up, and what it wants me to do, see how it says select here? It wants me to select edges. All right, so I'm going to select this edge. I want to do it all the way around, so I keep selecting all 4 edges. I probably should even select these edges. Rotate. Okay, rotate to the bottom. So you can see I am selecting, and I'm not holding anything down on my keyboard. It's allowing me to select all of these edges. Okay, just when I orbit, I hold Shift and my scroll wheel. Okay, and now it wants me to put in how much I want the radius to be. So let's just go with maybe a 2mm radius. Okay, we don't have to go crazy there. And right away the preview pops up, but you have to hit OK or enter in order to put that into action. And now you can see my part is nicely rounded, you know, not in any danger. Again, especially if it's made out of metal. At any given time, if you get lost, you know, and you want to get back to a nice 3D view, just press your home button up here and it will automatically snap back. Okay, which is, it's nice to have this up here, okay? So you're not just using the orbit tool, you can press home there and it'll take you back to this view. Okay, I'm now just going to add a chamfer to these holes. Okay, so it's called countersinking the holes, so that, you know, sometimes you'll see this on parts so that the actual head of the screw goes into the shape, and I'll show you what that means now. Okay, so I'll go to Modify and then click on chamfer. I'm going to select, see again, select your edges that you want to chamfer, there, and now specify the distance right here. Let's go with a 5mm chamfer. You see that angle? Okay, so that's called a countersink. Okay, it's a chamfer, but when it's meant for a screw, it's called a countersink. That's for the head of the screw to kind of sit in nice and flush with this part. Okay, so the head of the screw would be sitting in there. And we just created our very first part in Fusion 360, a very, very simple little rectangular block with 2 countersunk holes. I will show you a few more tools as we go here, but that will be the end of our video.